As Jennifer mentioned, I'm from Conexus Credit Union, and I'm in the Human Resources Department, so I may not see all the resumes that come through, but I do see a great portion of them that come through. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the interview process and hopefully give you guys some insight. I'm going to be covering some of the information that the presenters did this morning, so hopefully the repetition's a good thing. Yes, it is. And with that, so purpose of the interview. I think Sherry from the U of S mentioned this morning that when it comes to the recruitment process, it really should be a balanced approach. And for you as the interviewee, really it is the time for you to gather more information about the organization, the position you're applying for, and its responsibilities. Really, it's your opportunity to interview them to determine if this is the job, if this job is the right type of work that you want to do. So after you go through all that evaluation of what do you want, in the interview, it's to make sure that this job matches what you've determined is for you. Discuss your skills, obviously, your knowledge, your experience with the employer, and connecting the dots for them to how it will transfer to their opportunity, thus convincing them that you are the person for the job. For the employer, our goal is to assess your skills, your abilities in relation to the job requirements. You are the expert on your experience. We know what the job requires, so we're trying to assess how those two will match. Gauging your skills in relation to the other individuals who are applying for the position. Determining your level of interest in the position. Maybe if you have all the skill sets, it's not really a keen match to your passion. Determining your fit within the culture of the organization. As one of the earlier presenters mentioned, salary is not everything. It's also that you fit with the culture and that you actually want to come to work. It's like they say, you find the right job, you never work a day in your life. So how do you prepare for the interview? After you've calmed your nerves down that you have to do it, you research the position, research the company and their organization. Prepare questions to ask the interviewer. Myself, I always find it really impressive when somebody comes in with a couple questions prepared to ask of me. One time I had an interview and she almost threw me back because I wasn't anticipating it whatsoever, but she boldly asked me, "So why do you still work here?" I kind of took a second because I don't know that I've really been asked that question, and it just kind of showed me that not only was I evaluating her, but she was evaluating me and our company if it was a fit for her. Make a list of possible questions that you will be asked, and that's just doing more of those mock interviews they talked about. Reviewing the job posting and think of related examples from your past experience. So try not getting too caught up in what us HR people put in those job postings, but trying to figure out, they talk about customer service. Where have I done customer service in my experience? And having some examples prepared like that. I'm not talking about bringing in a 2-inch binder of examples, but at least some things to prompt your memory, because everybody knows when you're in that interview, you all sometimes look like that deer in a headlight, and having that little note to remind you, remember John from the restaurant that came in and complained about a steak being wrong. Like something to prompt your memory so that you can recall that example to share with them. I'm Greek, restaurants in our blood. Sorry, that's the first example that came to mind. Preparing for the interview, again, review your resume. Another thing I've really noticed in all the interviews I've done is people who come in with a copy of their resume or a piece of paper with some jot notes, they just seem so much more comfortable and confident because they have paper in front of them too, not just the interviewer. So, if you want to bring a copy of your resume or some notes, by all means do that. Even if you don't refer to it, it may be more of a crutch that you just feel comfortable and makes you feel more confident in the situation. Personally, I rehearse with a friend. That comes back to that mock interview type thing. I get asked for a lot of dinners and coffees to interview people of my friends when they're going for jobs. Prepare yourself by finding out the location, the interview, make sure you have enough travel time. If you do need any accommodations, making sure to ask the interviewer to, accommodate any of that if you just need to know where's the exit with the automatic door or anything like that. Contact your references either prior or shortly after the interview just to advise them that you are going to an interview and they may be contacted. Typical questions you can expect in an interview. Obviously, they'll go over your resume. The question earlier from the first panel, someone was talking about, when you go through a lot of jobs, sometimes it can cause a red flag when you see a lot of here 4 months, here 6 months, here this. And it could be as simple as that you were on a bunch of contract work. I've actually seen people put on their resumes, they'll put co-op summer work term, or they'll put temporary employment completed work term, something of that nature, just because then sometimes they don't call you to give you the opportunity to explain why you were only there for a short time. So by putting the temporary on there or explaining it in that text, it can sometimes open up that window that your resume keeps getting pursued and not just said, ooh, red flag, this person keeps having to leave employers kind of thing. In this marketplace though, with how many jobs, it's not as a big of a red flag as when I started about 10 years ago. If you saw someone hopping around every 6 months to a year, you're going, what the heck's wrong with this person? They keep moving around. Where in this day and age with all the career opportunities, you see a little bit more changing of careers more frequently. Why do you want to work for this organization? What are your short, long-term career goals? Again, that's more around the fit. What are you looking for in a job? How do you feel about ongoing learning and education? This is a question that if you've researched the company and you see lots of communication about lifelong learning and committing to our employees' development, they may ask you this question, because that would be an expectation of the job. What type of work environment do you like to work in? That's, again, trying to make the fit for you. So if you say that you don't like dealing with customers, they might not put you in a customer service job. But if you really like dealing with numbers and computers, maybe there's a help desk or an IT administrative job that might be more a fit for you. Do you prefer to work I'm stuttering. Do you prefer to work as part of a team or on your own? Why did you leave your previous employment? Again, that's where the opportunity that Jennifer was talking about to explain the movement on your resume. What are your salary expectations? Discussing references. Lots of employers these days will ask you about references. Some will call, some may not call those references. But by having those prepared, it just shows your open, honest communication with them. Different types of interview questions, they kind of fall into 3 different categories. Quite often you'll get behavioral event interviewing type questions. These are questions that they're asking you looking for specific examples, like tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult customer. Tell me about a time you did data entry. Tell me about a time you used your problem-solving skills. What they do is, the theory behind this is that how you've handled past experiences would predict how you'll handle them in the future. Myself, I personally love these questions because, as anybody knows, job titles don't capture everything. So this is your opportunity to really show them what you've had some experience and how you've dealt with them. And that's what they're hoping to get from you too. Situational interview questions are more like what-if scenarios, like if you were dealing with a difficult customer, how would you handle it? Those are really important when you're dealing with students, because sometimes you guys, as the U of S representative mentioned, you guys have a lot of these skills, but you maybe haven't gotten paid for them or been in that. So it's kind of trying to think to get to your thought process. How would you how would you handle that? Traditional interviews are kind of that more freewheeling type conversations. Tell me about your strengths. What are your weaknesses? What are your interests? In an interview session, in an interview, the one thing that should always be at the forefront of your brain, whatever type of question they're asking should be related to the job. That's the most important thing. They can't ask you, do you have a family and do you have kids or stuff like that. For example, I can't ask you if you have a car unless there is mobility required for a job, and even there I have to ask, can you be mobile between different locations? So it's always important that even in those traditional interview settings, it should still be related to the opportunity. A couple interviews do. Arrive on time, if possible, a few minutes ahead of time. Listen attentively. And don't be embarrassed. If you need the question to be repeated or rephrased, the interviewer should feel more than comfortable to do that for you and accommodating. It is difficult when you're on the spot being asked a question, I think, right off the spot. Heck, when you guys ask me some questions later on the panel, I'll probably need you to repeat them. It's completely human to do that. Speak clearly and distinctively if possible. Respond to the questions with brief and direct answers, and as possible, be honest. Remember, when you're in an interview, they're just trying to find out about you, and the only person that's the expert in the room about you is you. And if you can keep that mindset when you're in that setting, it'll help you through the process. A couple don'ts. Don't be too defensive, apologetic. I dare say, I think someone else wrote that word, desperate, but rambling or giving lengthy answers, that's one thing I have to keep an eye on for myself. Complaining about present or former jobs. As Jennifer was saying, if you're in a job that you're not happy, try muddle through the month or two and get to that job. Well, when you're getting that interview and you're maybe not in the best job environment right now, try not to focus on those negatives during the interview, because those will come across negatively and kind of give you impression that way. It's not to say make it a rosy-colored garden, but it's not the forum to complain about that type of thing. Don't be critical of others, speaking too quickly or too slowly. Use of inappropriate language or slang. It seems like these days everyone's becoming a lot more loose with their language, and if it's a professional setting, you probably want to make sure that you're speaking properly to the audience. Chewing gum or having bad breath. If you're in a small interview room, the bad breath part. But the chewing gum, it's just, again, it can impair when you're trying to communicate your thoughts. Here are just some information that may be provided by the interviewer prior or during the interview, but these are a couple things I always tell people to kind of keep in their brain when they're evaluating job opportunities. Make sure you walk out of that interview understanding what are the most important duties of this position. What hours of work are they going to expect of you? Is there going to be overtime? Is there going to be an expectation to work Saturdays or evenings? You need to know that stuff, because when they call you back with possibly that offer, you need to make an informed decision to accept that. Ask them how to describe a typical day in the position. Is there any training provided for this role, or what type of training? When can I expect my first evaluation? So more, do you guys provide feedback on how I'm doing? Can you share with me why you're filling this position? That's more of you guys can feel out the situation, but I've been asked that too, and it's a good question, because, if someone's just retiring, it makes you think, oh, they're filling this because somebody's been with the company that long, maybe it's a good company that way. What are the company benefit plan like? How are employees promoted within the organization? How are salary increases determined? Again, you can feel out the situation when it's appropriate to ask these kind of questions. If there's a salary range, if vacation is important to you. I always encourage people, if they haven't been told by the interviewer, ask them, when can I expect to hear from you? Would it be all right if I followed up with you if I haven't heard by a certain time frame? Again, that goes back to Sherry's example that it should really be an even weight scale, that it's an interaction between both. So you're done the interview. Phew. What I always suggest to people is now look at everything you've gathered. Review the information about the company, the position, and determine if they were to ask me, if they were going to call me with this job right now, would I take it? Is this a fit for me? And by doing that, then you're assuring the fit's there for you. We're trying to make sure the fit's there for the company. You got to make sure the company's a fit for you. If you receive that contact from the company with the decision, and on the bad side that you maybe weren't successful, you may choose to send a thank you card or maybe email. Ask them if there's other opportunities coming up in the near future that you could be considered for. If successful and you accept, obviously, if you're working currently, inform the company of your acceptance. If let's say they offer you the job and you realize, this just isn't a match for me. I know you guys are offering it, definitely thank them for the time. Let them know, why you felt maybe this wasn't a fit, if it's appropriate. Being honest with them is so much appreciated. Like, let's say they offer you a job and you're like, I was really hoping for something a little bit more than entry level. being honest with them will leave, hopefully, the relationship at a good place, that if they're a larger company, maybe they'll start thinking of other places to place you instead. What to wear, it's very vague. Really, every work environment's a little different. So clothing and footwear that's suitable for the position and maybe a step up. I usually joke with people that, go to one of our branches and see how everyone's dressed and come kind of tied up to that. But if you're applying for a construction company, you're probably not going to come in a three-piece suit. So know where you're applying and kind of go appropriately. If you're really unsure, I think it would be appropriate going, when they're booking the interview, say, I just was wondering, is there any kind of dress code I should be aware of? It's just showing, again, your interest and your commitment. Whatever you wear, please let it be neat, clean, and tidy. So in summary, we just covered the process of the interview, preparing for it, a few questions to expect and hopefully ask, those do's and don'ts. The only other don't is, that whole professional image that Carol talked about. If you have an email address like with Yahoo or MSN or something like that, crazy little biker chick gives an impression. So, go sign up for that second free Hotmail account with a professional setting kind of thing. That's one thing we kind of chuckle about every so often when we see the Hotmail accounts come through on the students. It's, again, that professional image we're talking about that's really important to kind of set up. That's about all I have to say. So I'll pass it on to the next speaker.